Ultimately, discipline isn't about depriving ourselves of comfort and enjoyment, but about freeing ourselves from the chains of impulsivity and desire that would otherwise control our thoughts and actions, dragging us down into a life that we do not deliberately choose, but one that is chosen by the world around us and the people around us that trigger an impulse and subsequently takes hold over our actions. Welcome to Orion Philosophy, where we explore, discuss and dissect areas of practical philosophy for use in everyday life. Discipline. The thing we all seem to want, but which seems to continually slip between our fingers like sand. Every day you and I have the option to do whatever we like. Thousands of possibilities are laid out before us, from the moment we wake to the moment we put our head down on our pillow. However, with all of this choice, it's rare that we consistently choose to do the things we know we should do. We might go to the gym after work. We may even walk right past the vending machine despite the rumble in our stomach. But many of us find that it's difficult to do these kinds of things consistently, to tick every box on the list of things we know we should do, and avoid everything we know we shouldn't do. Every now and then we'll make an excuse not to go to the gym. After all, it has been a long day. And we'll grab chocolate from the vending machine, because we deserve a treat and we were good last week. So if we know what we need to do to get in shape, to build that business, to write that book, build better relationships, kick smoking, and any number of things we want to either start, stop, or improve, what is that voice within us that holds us back? This is the inner battle of discipline and desire, or discipline and impulse. When one is stronger than the other, the stronger one almost always wins. It isn't reasonable to expect never to have desire or impulse. So then we need to develop discipline to make sure that it's the stronger of the two. Stoicism is an ancient school of Hellenistic philosophy that was developed over 2,000 years ago, under the sun of ancient Athens. Zeno of Citium gathered with his fellow Athenians in the ancient city to discuss how we can live a good and happy life. The answers that these particular ancient Greeks came up with for these questions produced Stoic philosophy, a school of thought that is still practiced to this day. But what does any of this have to do with discipline, and how does it help me stick to my 4-day-a-week gym routine? And that is a good question. The Stoics have a number of core principles that help structure and question our thoughts, and they do so in such a way that cuts through the excuses we make for ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves that we use to validate being undisciplined. Here we'll go through 4 specific rules that the Stoics use to develop themselves into people that do the right thing despite laziness, doubt and discomfort. These 4 are the dichotomy of control, the path of virtue, the art of acceptance, and mindfulness, all looked at through the lens of Stoic philosophy. But before we sink our teeth into any of these rules, let's clarify exactly what we mean by discipline. This word in the world around us is often seen as a tyrant in our day-to-day life. We're beaten with it when we do something we shouldn't, or we don't do something we should have done. It's a word that can have an underlying feeling of mandatory obedience, the suppression of our desire, and the unquestionable adherence to the rules we make for ourselves, or that other people make for us. Because of this, many people shy away from discipline. It's easier to ignore the need to be disciplined and carry on doing what we've always done, than it is to get up, change our behaviour, and say no to the voice in us that lures us back onto the sofa, back onto Netflix, or back onto the pizza delivery app. However, we can reframe discipline, and instead of viewing it as a tyrant, see it as a friend. It fosters our well-being, guides us towards lasting happiness, and gives us the ability to harness our potential. It's a skill that can be developed over time, and as it develops, becomes easier and easier to master. At its core, discipline is simply choosing one path over another. However, when we deliberately choose this specific path, we are aligning our choices with our deepest values, and in doing so naturally guides us towards goals that we have or the people we want to be. Without discipline, we risk wandering aimlessly through life's labyrinth of fleeting desires, whims, impulses, and passions. With discipline, we can navigate all of this more easily because we're much more resilient to the things that pull us off our path. Ultimately, discipline isn't about depriving ourselves of comfort and enjoyment, but about freeing ourselves from the chains of impulsivity and desire that would otherwise control our thoughts and actions, dragging us down into a life that we do not deliberately choose, but one that is chosen by the world around us and the people around us that trigger an impulse and subsequently takes hold over our actions. So let's have a closer look at exactly what Stoicism has to offer us. The dichotomy of control. Epictetus was a Stoic philosopher who left us with the dichotomy of control, an idea that draws a line between the events in our life that we have control over and those that we have no control over. To Epictetus, there was no in-between. Epictetus explained that we only really have control over our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs, and our judgments. Everything else is outside the reach of our control. This includes, but is not limited to, the actions and beliefs of other people, the weather, the traffic, the economy, time, and the physical health of our body. He went on to explain that when we get this distinction right, we are much better able to focus our energy on the areas of life that we have direct control over, and in doing so, we become more effective, confident, deliberate, and resourceful people. When we get this wrong, however, we are unable to determine what we can control and what we can't, and are therefore bound to waste our time and energy on trying to change things that we have no power to change. Because of this, we risk becoming frustrated, bitter, resentful, and altogether generally unhappy. So how does this tie into discipline? Well, when we have the ability to divide these things into two categories, we can quickly see if we're being held back by externals, or if the barriers to changing our habits lie within us. If they are externals, then we need to learn to accept them as they are, and look for ways we can leverage our choices and our mindset to try and overcome them. For example, if we want to get in shape, but there's no gym close to where we live, we may have to get our hands on some basic equipment. We need to accept that no amount of frustration is going to bring a gym closer to us. But we do have control over our actions, and we can get our hands on some basic gym equipment. If we don't have the money, then we can Google bodyweight exercises and use what we have at home. Whenever we have an obstacle in front of us that's external, our first step should be to look inward and think about ways we can act or think to overcome it, rather than venting and wallowing in our frustration. If we're faced with internal headwinds, then we have a completely different challenge. Often our lack of discipline is rooted in how we think. It's not uncommon for people to make up stories to validate behaviour that's driven by impulse and desire. It's kind of our mind's way of hijacking our ability to think critically and bend it to the will of our passions. In cases like this, the first step is developing the ability to become self-aware. When we're self-aware, we can catch ourselves in the act. When we catch ourselves in the act, we can begin to see patterns in our thinking. And when we see patterns in our thinking, we find areas of our mindset that need to be reframed. Anything like this that falls within the circle we control is our responsibility. Secondly, we have the path of virtue. The Stoics believed that virtue was the only good, and that behaviour in conflict with virtue was the only evil. Stoicism teaches us that when one acts with virtue, and strives to weave virtue into their daily life, they will naturally find themselves on the path to a life well lived, one of happiness, contentment, and good spirit. On the other hand, when one forgoes virtue and allows the pull of desire to drag them away from virtuous behaviour, they become saturated with guilt, pain, envy, and other negative emotions that lead to a life of unhappiness and suffering. To the Stoics, there were 4 core virtues that can be used as a compass to a good life. These are wisdom, temperance, courage, and justice. Wisdom in the Stoic sense is not merely an intellectual understanding, but also practical insight. Wisdom includes the ability to navigate life's complexities, make informed decisions, and determine what is truly valuable. It includes our ability to look at the world objectively and see it for what it is, rather than what we want it to be. Wisdom involves the understanding that some things are within our control, while others are not. It includes distinguishing things between good, bad, and indifferent, emphasizing that virtue is the only good, vice is the only evil, and everything else is indifferent. Wisdom also includes the understanding that everything around us is beholden to the laws of nature, and wanting things that have already passed to be different is essentially wanting the laws of nature to change. Courage for the Stoics is not limited to physical bravery, but also embodies moral courage, the strength to stay true to one's ethical convictions, even when faced with adversity or pressures to bend. It is about maintaining dignity and integrity under all circumstances. Stoic courage involves the willingness to accept and face the realities of life, including suffering and death, without succumbing to excessive fear or distress. This doesn't mean that we don't fear or distress anything, but it is about not suffering more than is necessary. Justice in Stoic philosophy is about fairness, kindness, and recognizing the dignity and value in all human beings. Justice implies an active effort to contribute to society's welfare and uphold social harmony. It involves treating every individual with respect, regardless of their status or behavior, as we are all part of a broader community of rational beings. Temperance, also translated as moderation or self-control, is the virtue of regulating one's desires and impulses. This virtue is directly connected to discipline. It is about creating balance and harmony in life. Temperance ensures that we do not let our appetites or emotions dominate our actions, but instead we respond to them in a measured and mindful manner, contributing to our personal growth and the well-being of others. When we can learn to reflect these Stoic virtues in our own behaviour, we not only become more disciplined, we're also more likely to walk a path that brings us closer to a happy and well-lived life. The Stoic art of acceptance. The Stoics held firm in the belief that acceptance is an important part of any personal philosophy. But how does acceptance, a seemingly passive way of life, help the active pursuit of building discipline? To understand this connection, we first have to take a deeper look into acceptance as an active endeavour rather than a passive resignation to the fate of the world around us. Acceptance in the Stoic sense is not about lying down, giving up and letting the world go by around us. It's about acknowledging and confronting the truth of reality, recognizing the things around us for what they are, and moving forward with that knowledge, instead of complaining about the state of the world and wishing it were different. Some things just are, and accepting them as they are can go a long way to preventing needless frustration, and in frustration's place, building a resilient peace of mind. Discipline in essence is a continuous commitment to a specific and deliberate behaviour. Behaviours that help align our life and the direction of our life with our long-term goals and values. The practice of acceptance helps us stay true to this path despite coming into hurdles along the way. With acceptance, we don't dwell on the hurdle, we see it for what it is, we accept it, and then we find a way over it. Consider the disciplined pursuit of physical fitness again. Unforeseen circumstances like an injury or a sudden change in routine might disrupt our regimen. However, through acceptance, we shift our focus from the uncontrollable event, the injury or change, to what we can control, our personal response. With this mindset, we can choose to modify our exercise routine, we can adapt to the change, and continue our discipline despite the interruption. It is this skill of adaptable resilience that acceptance can nurture, a trait that is closely connected to discipline. In addition, practicing acceptance helps us maintain consistency and discipline by helping us manage our emotional reactions. Disappointments or setbacks may trigger negative emotions in us, leading us to abandon our disciplined routines. But acceptance allows us to witness these emotions without letting them capsize us. We learn to accept our feelings without letting them dictate our actions, and by extension, our discipline becomes more resilient. Mindfulness is the fourth Stoic practice on the list, and one that's often overlooked in our modern explanations of the philosophy. At first glance, mindfulness and discipline might seem like unlikely companions. However, when we look deeper into the philosophy, we can see that they're bound together like two sides of the same coin. To show the nature of this connection, we'll need to go over some of the basics of what exactly we mean when we say mindfulness. With roots both in Stoic philosophy and Eastern traditions, mindfulness is about developing our ability to be engaged in the present moment, aware of our thoughts in real time, and cognizant of our actions while we're acting. The opposite of mindfulness would be to be tangled up in thoughts about the past, present, or future at any given time, meaning that we have no headspace to focus on our awareness on the here and now. At this point, you might be thinking how mindfulness relates to discipline. But if we think of discipline as deliberately choosing one action over another, we can also see how the ability to recognize our thoughts and emotions in real time can help prevent these very thoughts and emotions from pulling us into behaviors that contradict with our values and goals. Mindfulness and awareness allows us to catch these desires as they act and allows us to reject them. Consider the discipline of maintaining a healthy diet. Mindfulness enables us to be fully aware of our eating habits, to notice the impulse to reach out for that unnecessary snack, to savor each bite, and to recognize when we're full and satisfied. This awareness can help fortify our discipline by helping us stick to our dietary choices despite momentary temptations. In addition, mindfulness encourages us to stay focused on the present task, a trait critical to discipline. It anchors us in the here and now, helping us to engage fully in our current activity. This focus can bolster our productivity and effectiveness, enhancing the quality of our disciplined routines.